There are many difficult achievements that stand out in the history of NES Tetris, from a max-out score to level 30 and eventually level 31, but none of them took as long to get on video as a successful completion of 19.5, which for decades was considered to be virtually impossible. So what makes it so difficult? Let's take a look. This is the story of a mode that had always seemed just out of reach to the world's top players, which includes a breakdown of strategy from the first player ever confirmed to beat it, and the revelation of a quirk hidden in the game's code that holds the key to conquering it. The first thing to understand about 19.5 is that it's played on the second mode of the game. The NES Tetris games seen in the World Championship matches are played from A-type mode on the loading screen, where the levels and speed gradually progress upwards as you clear lines, and you score as much as possible before the speed becomes too fast. On B-type, you choose a level that remains for the entire game, and it ends after you successfully clear 25 lines. But there's a second component, the 6 different heights you can choose going from 0 to 5. Each height gives you a certain amount of rows of random blocks, or garbage on your screen to make it more challenging. Height 0 has, as the name would suggest, 0 lines of garbage. Height 1 has 3 lines, Height 2 has 5 lines, Height 3 has 8 lines, Height 4 has 10 lines, and finally, Height 5 has 12 lines. The level number, along with the height number you choose for the game, becomes the name of the B-type mode, and is factored into your score on the end screen. And similarly to A-type, where a higher score results in a larger rocket, the B-type games also have special end screens. In fact, there's a different one for each level. Depending on what height you choose, on level 0 you'll see up to 6 dragonflies buzzing across the screen. On level 1 you'll see doves, and it continues up the levels with penguins, flying saucers, pterodactyls, Goodyear blimps, ostriches, dragons, and space shuttles. But the level 9 end screen is special because it shows various other iconic Nintendo characters. If you're on height 0, Icarus appears. For height 1, Link joins the party. Height 2 adds Samus, Height 3 adds Donkey Kong, Height 4 adds Bowser, and finally on Height 5, Mario and Luigi appear dancing while Princess Peach claps, and all the towers on top of St. Basil's Cathedral blast off into the stratosphere. So yeah, Mario actually makes a cameo in NES Tetris. But anyways, that's B-type in a nutshell. So when you hear a commentator during the World Championships say someone is playing B-type,
and Reed's looking like B-type right now,
what it means is that Chris Bidwell is being a savage! But anyways, B-type has long been a fun puzzle mode used by many as a trainer for various garbage situations you might encounter on A-type. The one issue is after a certain point, levels 0 through 9 become so easy that they don't really present much of a challenge. When I first started playing, 9.5 looked straight up impossible to me. And now, unless I get a completely disastrous piece sequence or I have a catastrophic misdrop, I'm going to be able to beat it like every single time. Piece of cake. So what was it that made 9.5 go from impossible to possible? For me at least, the answer was learning how to manage DAS. It's something I've talked about before, and I'll probably reach the point soon where I don't need to explain it every video, but in case this is the first video you've seen from me, here's the 30-second version. When you hold down the D-pad to move a piece to the side, there's an extra gap of time between the first movement and all subsequent movements. That time gap is the delayed auto shift, or DAS. It works the same way as when you hold down a key on the keyboard. There's an extra gap of time between the first letter appearing and all subsequent letters. This is done to prevent you from accidentally typing more than one letter per keystroke. And the reason is the same in Tetris, to prevent you from accidentally moving the piece more than you intended. When the game speeds up though, this extra time gap is hugely detrimental because at the top of the board you need to move pieces over as fast as possible. So there's a bunch of different techniques to remove or minimize this extra time gap, or to keep DAS charged, such as wall charges, skill stops, dead drops, and something called the red fireball technique. But now, what's left to do after 9.5 is no longer difficult? It turns out that by holding down the A button while you press start, you can add 10 levels on top of the level you choose. So now 0.1 becomes 10.1, 3.2 becomes 13.2, etc. And this allows for you to play B B-type on 3 of the most significant starting levels in the NES Tetris scene: 15, 18, and 19. 15 and 18 are the highest levels within the respective speeds of 1 drop every 4 and 3 frames, and are the 2 levels you can start on in the World Championships. And 19, with its pieces dropping once every 2 frames, is the highest speed you can choose in an unmodified version of the game. So 15, 18, and 19 are kind of the 3 most important levels skill-wise of B-type. And I find it fun that you can kind of pinpoint exactly where your own skill level lies by if a certain B-type level feels easy, difficult, or nearly impossible to finish. Since I was pretty much right in the middle of the 172 qualifying scores for the most recent Classic Tetris Monthly, I'll be using myself as kind of a quick litmus test of how hard a couple of these modes might be for an average player. So let's start things off with like 15-4 here. Okay, so even with going up from like level 9 to level 15, if you have control of DAS, you can still get pieces over to the side. Not that hard, and you can do it pretty high up. Piece of cake again. Now let's ramp things up a bit with 15-5. Okay, so this is a decent board to start, but the thing that's immediately different about 15-5 is that little bit of extra height makes things a lot harder. And shoot, I had a little bit of moment of lost DAS. Ugh. And there we go. 15-5 is definitely harder. Oh my gosh, finally. All right, so let's kick things up a notch with level 18. Now, level 18, it's significantly harder than level 15. You cannot move pieces to the side nearly as much, but still, 18-3, if you know what you're doing and you don't misdrop, it's not that hard still. All right, there we go. 18-4 though. I'm nervous about attempting this one. All right, let's try here. Gosh darn it. Yes. Jeez. And now 18-5. Do I even want to attempt this one? Oh gosh. Yikes. All right, there's one line. Dang it. I'm just gonna say 18-5 is out of my league and call it there. So let's kick things up to level 19. And level 19, again, the hardest level you can start on in an unmodified version of the game. Almost did it with a Tetris there, but there. 19-1, conquered. Now what about 19-2? It's still kind of low, but the thing is, on level 19, you have to like immediately be having the piece go in the trajectory you want. Otherwise, it just won't get there with DAS. Oh, shoot. All right, whew. I feel like I got a little lucky there. Because now if we go up to 19-3, I mean, shoot. Ugh. I really have very few options just with DAS. See, the only time the game's throwing me a bone here is right at the beginning where there's a little bit of a pause so I can put the first piece kind of where I want. But after that, like, oh my goodness, Lord help you. 5 lines, 5 lines, level 19, height 3. That's not even bad for me. So that's my chart, placing the top modes I'm really comfortable on as 15-4, 18-3, and 19-1. A seasoned competitor is able to do better. World Championship veteran Josh Tolles has a training regimen on his YouTube channel.
And this is what you're gonna wanna do. You need to master these skills to be an elite player. You want to be able to beat 15-5, 18-4, and 19-2 every single time you play it. Those are very similar difficulty levels at different speeds.
In part 2, Josh talks about 18-5 and 19-3 being his stretch goals. Thus, the chart of an elite competitor in the tournaments might look something like this. So what's left on the chart? Well, what about 19-4? Well, 19-4 is barely beatable only by the most elite DAS players such as Green Tea, who is a TGM Grandmaster, or Jonas Neubauer, the 7-time Classic Tetris World Champion. And even then, it's a real challenge because you're incredibly limited at what you can do with DAS at high heights on level 19 since the pieces lock nearly instantly to the stack and don't slide around like they do in modern Tetris. Becoming a pro DAS player essentially involves memorizing exactly how far each piece can move with fully charged DAS so you know what moves are even possible. And because the pieces spin with a bias towards the right, it's very hard to get stuff to the left. For example, on level 19, a line piece cannot move over a left well that is more than 6 rows high without something called a last second tap. Josh explains the last second tap in part 2 of his training regimen.
When you get to this
second to last column, you're going to manually tap it left one more time within that 6-frame window.
Basically, it takes advantage of the first horizontal movement from a tap being instantaneous by timing an additional tap exactly right to move the piece an extra column over. This especially advanced technique allowed him to eventually join the 19-4 club earlier this year. But last-second taps are hard to pull off consistently. Even a successful one has its drawbacks, as it typically sacrifices the DAS of the next piece. And 19-4's garbage goes up 10 rows anyways. Moving a line piece here on anything other than the first piece is straight up impossible using DAS, even with a quick tap. So how do you overcome the limitations of DAS? Well, you bypass it altogether with manual tapping. Enter the world of hypertapping. If you can tap your finger at more than 10 times a second, or 10 hertz, you can move the pieces to the side faster than DAS. For a long time, elite hypertappers were incredibly rare. After all, not only do you physically have to be able to do it, you also still have to have that deep knowledge and experience in how to stack. Aside from long-retired 1990 Nintendo World Champion Thor Åkerlund, Japanese Grandmaster Corion, and the mysterious Dan Z who never competed in any major tournaments, there weren't many others who had ever done it at a high level. But in 2018, Joseph Xael burst into the scene, able to consistently tap at unprecedented speeds, and after practicing for hours nearly every day for a year, he won the 2018 World Championships in October in a triumphant rookie debut. Shortly afterwards, that December, Joseph got his first 19-4, able to zip pieces over to the side with ease. And I find it maybe a little bit representative of the difference in difficulty of playing 19-4 with hyper tapping versus DAS by comparing Joseph and Jonas's reactions to completing it.
There it is. Yes.
Let's go! Oh, are you f***ing kidding me? Get the f*** out of here with that. What's happening?
So alright, that would make then an approximate chart for hypertappers and maybe the best of the best DAS players. But there was still one stage that no one had ever recorded themselves beating, 19-5. At a staggering 12 lines of garbage, 19-5 is so frustrating to attempt that most people don't even bother trying. It had just been considered virtually impossible since the game came out in 1989. Maybe feasible with a perfect board and perfect moves, but who was going to sit down and do that? Myself and many others thought Joseph was going to be the first one to crack it, but after a few sporadic attempts, he appeared to lose interest. Thor Åkerlund might have gotten it way back in the day, but without any video, it's impossible to know for sure if or how he would have done it. By 2019, however, a new generation of hypertappers had emerged onto the scene. The online tournament Classic Tetris Monthly had a rapid climb in talent level, hosting rising tapping stars such as Nenu and Richard, who would eventually win monthly titles, and PMYA, who actually made it significantly far into a 19-5 attempt before misdropping a piece at the most unfortunate of moments. And then, right before the 2019 World Championships, I was researching and gathering information on new competitors for my preview video. A hypertapper by the name of Marq had just won the Germany qualifier to win a free trip and a guaranteed spot in the World Championships in Portland. And when I looked at his YouTube channel, to my shock, he had just put up a video of himself completing 19-5, which to this day still has less than 300 views. After years of people wondering if this would ever be possible, it felt like looking at a straight up miracle.
Ich bin jetzt der erste Mensch weltweit, der B wahrscheinlich, ich gehe mal davon aus. Ich weiß es nicht, vielleicht hat es jemand geschafft. Aber ich glaube, ich bin der erste Mensch auf der Welt, der jetzt B-Modus 19.5 geschafft hat.
He was right! 29 years and 10 months after the game was originally released, this was indeed the first successful 19-5 ever captured on video. So, I called him up to ask him about this crazy achievement.
How long did it take you to beat NTSC 19-5?
I will give you a short answer and after that a little bit of story.
Okay.
The short answer is 20 minutes.
20 minutes? What? Well, it would only be fitting of someone like Marq.
How did you originally get involved in NES Tetris?
I played a little bit of Tetris, of NES Tetris actually, as a little kid, but I think like everyone I got involved in competitive NES Tetris with YouTube videos, but not the Boom Tetris for Jeff video. I just got the normal CTWC videos in my recommendations that kind of snowballed into what it is now for me. I seriously started, I would say, a month before CTWC Germany 2018. Before that I played just a little bit for fun.
Unfortunately, Marq didn't show up to the qualifying stations in 2018 until the day was almost over.
I knew it too late, so I came 50 minutes before end of qualifiers. And I saw the CTBC Germany, and I was like, okay, I can try to make some scores, but I didn't make it in because I was just too late.
Well, I mean, you took matters in your own hands, and you're like, next year,
Yes,
you just wait.
Exactly.
After being inspired at the 2018 Germany tournament, Marq practiced hard for next year's event by playing on a PAL console local to his region, only to find out at the last minute that instead of PAL, the tournament would be on NTSC like it is in the World Championships. Despite having to adjust to the new speeds practically on the fly, Marq still managed to win.
How long have you been playing NTSC Tetris?
3 days.
3 days.
So how exactly did Marq beat 19.5?
The story about that is like, I tried B-Mode 19.4 for about 1 hour, but I couldn't finish it. After that I went on my Discord server and I asked the people like, how many people ever beaten B-Mode 19.4? And they told me like, this guy and this guy. And I was like, and what about 19.5? How many people beat that? And the people on my server told me like, no one has officially beaten it. And it's kinda impossible and more like a meme thing or something. And yeah, I took that as a challenge. The next day I tried for like 20 minutes and I just got it after 20 minutes. Very important part, maybe even the most important, is the very first block. If you start a new game, you can like move the first block around a little bit before it will start to fall. The first block is pretty much free, you can place it anywhere. You can't get very much blocks to the left. The best thing you want to do is you want to place the first block on the left. The best case is if you have like on the far left, on the first column, like a hole, and you can fill this hole with the first block. So the first block should be like an I piece or an J piece. You can see after I put that J piece into this hole, the top left side is completely filled up. And I was very lucky about the board because on the right side there was also a little bit filled out with blocks. After the first block, I just had to place the blocks in the middle of the playing field. And after you burned the solid filled left side down, I think the most important block after that is an L block. Because if you have a hole on the left that is really high, you won't be able to get like a long bar into this hole. So you need an L piece to place it flat on the left, but still get like on the L piece this little thing into the hole on the left. After you did that, you should be burned down enough to just play normally or relatively normally and do flat and clever burning.
Where can the audience watch more of your play?
Obviously on my YouTube channel, I upload all my PBs. I'm planning on starting to stream very soon, on Twitch of course. That's where you can watch me play.
So that's how 19.5 was finally conquered. But shortly after our interview, Marq contacted me to let me know that another player, incredibly, had also completed 19.5, a young tapper named Jake. And incredibly, he had managed to do it a staggering 6 times. So who exactly was this Jake? I reached out to talk to him as well, and eventually he would reveal a final clue that explained how 19.5 needed to be approached.
My name is Jake, I'm 14 years old. I got into NES Tetris in February of 2018. At that time, Puyo Puyo Tetris was releasing for PC, and I was sort of just interested in a lot of Tetris at the time. And I had just done some research on the NWC 1990. So I'd already known about Thor Ackerland, so I got sort of interested in classic Tetris. I played DAS for about the first 4 or 5 months, and once I'd maxed out, I felt like I had sort of reached a limit. I couldn't play aggressive enough to get anything higher than what I'd already had. I saw a video of Richard playing level 29 on the Tetris Reddit, and I thought, yeah, I remember seeing Thor do that. I should try to do that. Maybe I'd be able to play a little higher. So I took a bunch of time to learn that, and it worked out in the end.
Jake gained widespread recognition when he won his first major tournament at Tetris Canada 2019.
I feel like that was a pretty big moment for me, because I was never really sure if I was even good at classic Tetris in any way. But by going to CTWC Canada and actually performing well under like sort of pressure, I sort of felt like a little more confident that I knew what I was doing.
So how long did it take for you to beat 19.5?
What's funny about that is it only really took about 20 minutes.
Wait, really?
Yeah, the thing about 19.5, it isn't as hard as you'd expect it to be.
The crazy thing is that Mark gave the exact same answer.
Really?
He said about 20 minutes.
Yeah, that... Because it really didn't take that long. The fact that he gave the same answer, that's insane.
Like the exact same amount of minutes, too. That is hilarious. That was not planned at all.
Just saying, I'm not coming to this with a script. That's totally genuine there.
So what was Jake's experience like with the infamous 19.5?
I think there's a line of code in the game that makes the top left corner of the board always empty. And that's really annoying for 19.5 because it's hard to get anything over there.
Jake wasn't being superstitious here, he's actually right. Two-time world finalist Alex Kerr discovered the quirk while working on a task project, and documented it on his user page for the Tetris wiki. The game's code will always inadvertently delete any garbage in the upper leftmost square on B-type. So it appears that Mark's strategy of immediately solving the left may not just be a potential solution, but a necessary one. There was a reason Jake, who would eventually win 2 monthly titles, had beaten 19.5 6 times. In addition to blazingly fast tapping, he had also figured out the reliable method for success.
So the biggest help on 19.5 is having a board generated that already has the left mostly built out, and it only needs one piece. And if you get that piece as your first one, you have like a big delay where you can just move the piece over there. And then you can just sort of clear on the right, and then it's only 19.4 height at that point.
There was a moment about 2/3 of the way through where you seemingly had it cleared and then you misdropped a T piece.
Yeah, okay. So there's a reason why that happened. I was in a Discord call with a few friends in CTM, and they made me laugh, and that's the biggest trouble for a hyper tapper, I'd say. Your whole arm just shuts down. There's nothing you can do about that. I'm surprised I even managed to clear that up.
Where can viewers watch more of your gameplay?
Well, you can watch me on Twitch. I stream nearly every day. You can also find me on my YouTube under the same name, where I post either offline games that are personal bests or just general stuff from my Twitch that I feel is noteworthy.
And some of them which have awesome MS Paint thumbnails.
Yeah, I always do that for the big ones because I feel like it helps them stand out.
Over the next 6 months, a handful of emerging stars have also managed to complete 19.5, such as Eric ICX, Sodium Overdose, and Poet13. Joseph Xael also managed to finally join the very exclusive club in April 2020. But something I find really cool about Marq and Jake, the two 19.5 pioneers, is that they first made their mark in the Tetris world not at the World Championships, but at local tournaments from their home countries. During the first few years of competitive classic Tetris history, the World Championships on the west coast of the United States happened to be the only major in-person tournament, and the talent pool was pretty much exclusively American. But nowadays, there's tournaments everywhere, and it's truly become a global scene.
So do you have any upcoming projects? I've heard something about a Classic Tetris Germany.
Yes. So we have like this, I would call it, it's like our organization. We are like people from Germany, from Austria, from Switzerland, and from Luxembourg, like all the German-speaking countries. We have a Discord server and like a Facebook page and all that stuff. We keep tracks of our PBs and have like high score lists. But the best thing, in my opinion, about this, we also have like local tournaments. We do them in all Germany. Different people organize them, and all the informations about the upcoming tournaments can be found on our Discord server and our Facebook page.
I'd actually like to give a shout out to CTWC Canada because there's another one happening in 2020. It'd be useful for people to know that it's happening so they could keep an eye out for that.
Despite things temporarily being put on hold due to social distancing, if you live in either of these areas and are interested in playing competitive NES Tetris, I'd definitely recommend getting involved in the online communities linked in the description so that when the coast is clear, you'll be able to know where and when the events are happening so you can be able to attend. And one more thing to note, Classic Tetris Germany is played on PAL Tetris, the version of Tetris that Marq had to switch over from in his qualifier. So what makes it different? Well, there's so much to cover with that, it's a topic for a whole nother video. Stay tuned.